All right, let's dive into a really fascinating geopolitical what-if scenario. We're going to explore what could happen if China and India, the dragon and the elephant, actually decided to join forces. It's a hypothetical that could literally redraw the entire global power map.
So let's just put the question right out there from the start. What would the real-world, tangible impact be if these two giants, with all their history and all their modern ambition, formed a genuine strategic partnership? Let's dig into the analysis and see what it suggests.
Okay, first things first. To even begin to wrap our heads around the potential of an alliance like this, we have to talk about scale. And I mean sheer scale. This isn't just any old partnership. We're talking about the possible foundation of a new kind of superpower.
Let's just start with this one number, 2.8 billion. That's the combined population of China and India. It's a number so big, it's almost hard to really process. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. This hypothetical alliance would represent more than a third of every single person on this planet. Think about the combined workforce, the consumer market, the sheer brain power. The takeaway is pretty clear. If these two nations decide to pull in the same direction, the rest of the world has no choice but to adjust. And here's where it gets really interesting. It's not just about the massive numbers. It's about how perfectly their economies could slot together, like two giant puzzle pieces. You've got China, the undisputed world's factory, dominating manufacturing. And then you have India, the world's service hub, a total powerhouse in software and IT. So one country makes the hardware, the other writes the code that makes it work. You put them together, and you've got a self-contained supply chain that would be incredibly hard for anyone else to compete with. Okay, so you've got this economic beast. What happens next? Well, the power doesn't stay just economic, right? It bleeds into everything else. This is how that alliance could create a completely new center of gravity, shaking up global politics and finances as we know it. Think about it. On the world stage, that kind of economic might translates directly into political muscle. China's already got a permanent seat on the UN Security Council, and India's been gunning for one for years. If they started voting as a bloc, they could totally reshape the outcomes in huge global bodies like the UN, the World Trade Organization, you name it. All of a sudden, US influence would face a seriously united front. And of course, you have to follow the money. This number, we're talking more than $800 billion, that's how much US debt China holds. And that isn't just some abstract figure on a balance sheet. It's a real lever of economic influence over the US economy. That leverage isn't just financial either. It's physical. It's about controlling the stuff the world literally runs on. A united China and India would have an incredible amount of control over industries that are absolutely critical for everyone. We're talking rare earth metals for our electronics, pharmaceuticals, IT, and even the future of green tech. Their dominance could create dependencies that would be felt everywhere. So we've covered the money and the politics. Now let's get into the hard power side of things. This is where this hypothetical alliance starts to look like a true high-tech superpower, with the potential to dominate across the board: military, cyber, and even space. Just look at their combined military might. You put these two forces together, and a pretty intimidating picture starts to form. China has the largest standing army in the world, and a navy that's growing like crazy. India has a massive, battle-tested defense force, is a nuclear power, and holds a strategic position in the Indian Ocean. The thought of them conducting joint military exercises, well, that's been described as a nightmare scenario for the Pentagon.
And that same synergy, it absolutely explodes in the tech world. Imagine this. You take China's total dominance in hardware. We're talking 5G, AI, surveillance tech. Then you pair that with India's giant pool of world-class software engineers and its role as a global IT hub. What do you get? A self-sufficient digital empire, a complete tech ecosystem that could rival and maybe even surpass Silicon Valley. And hey, why stop at Earth? In the new space race, this combination would be a powerhouse. You'd have China's incredible technological ambition. I mean, they've already landed rovers on both the moon and Mars. And you'd pair that with India's genius for frugal innovation. They famously got a mission to Mars for just $75 million. You put those two things together, and they could seriously dominate the future of space. So after all that, what does this actually mean for the United States? Well, the analysis points to a massive strategic dilemma. This kind of alliance would force America to confront a fundamentally new world order. Let's just say it plainly. The real fear here is that this signals the end of an era, the end of the world having just one solo superpower. Ever since the Cold War ended, the US has been pretty much the undisputed leader. A Sino-Indian alliance would be the clearest sign yet that we've shifted to a multipolar world with a new power block that's simply too big to ignore. And it all comes back to one crucial word: leverage. The power to influence things. The reality is, the US depends heavily on China for manufacturing and on India for IT services. In this scenario, that dependency stops being just an economic fact and becomes an incredibly powerful political tool that this new alliance could wield. There's a quote from the analysis that just hits the nail on the head. It's not about whether the US could win against a bloc like this. It's about whether it can adopt. The entire strategic chessboard would be different, and that would demand a total rethink of American foreign policy. Which brings us to the final, really tricky question. For decades, a classic American strategy has been divide and rule, balancing different powers against each other. But what happens if the two biggest rising powers decide they'd rather work together? That whole playbook becomes useless. It really makes you wonder, in a world with a brand new center of gravity, how does the old superpower adapt? It's definitely something to think about. Thanks for tuning in.